let's transition to the COVID units to show how we've used this model of family engagement into these units, and along with a sort of more explicit focus on social emotional learning. Um, the K-12 COVID-19 and health equity units are available for free, and I think Stacy, you'll give them access to it. My group was specifically focused on the K2 and 3-5 units, but there are units for also middle school and high school, and they're all available now. I will say that so this unit development happened last summer. Okay. And as you can imagine, and as it sounds like you all have been talking about, we know so much more now about COVID. There's vaccines now, there's variants now. And so we are in the process right now of revising the units based both on a field test that happened in the fall, but also new information about vaccines. And so the version that you'll see on the website is the old version, and we're hoping that we'll be able to release the new versions in early April. Just so you have a timing of like what's there. Okay. So the elementary units were designed through a partnership between Next Gen Storylines and Learning in Places, all under the umbrella of Open SciEd. So they're on the Open SciEd website. Okay. The elementary units make connections between these 6 disciplinary areas, focusing on NGSS practices, the ELA Common Core Anchor Standards, the Social Studies C3 framework, Learning for Justice, Social Justice Standards. This is formally teaching tolerance, and then the social emotional learning competencies from CASEL. Okay. And there are 5 threads through the units. We thread through equity and social justice, in particular, racial equity we focus on. We focus on the science of COVID-19, social emotional learning, decision-making, and family engagement. So you'll see that through each of the lessons, these threads are visible throughout as call-outs or as specific elements of each lesson. Okay. So in terms of family tools, we have kind of 3 types. Okay, so the first is a pre-unit tool where we're orienting actually families and teachers to key challenges and concepts engaged throughout the unit. So for example, you see 2 here, equity and COVID-19 and understanding children's conceptions of illness and death. We consulted experts in the field to help write these pre-unit tools and really to give people, both families and educators, background on, for example, I'm really nervous about talking to my kindergarten students about illness and death related to COVID-19. How do I do that? And we talked to developmental psychologists who said, actually, kids are very interested and very capable of having these kinds of conversations. And here's how you might do that. So these pre-unit tools really help orient families and teachers to having those kinds of conversations. Okay. We also have pre-lesson tools. So pre-unit tools are like before you begin the whole thing. Pre-lesson tools are really like, send this home to families before you teach this lesson, right? And we're going to, I'm actually going to engage you in one of these today. But what they do is they ground a new lesson in family and community ways of knowing. And so as an educator, you sort of have a kind of pre-assessment, although we don't, it's not as formal as an assessment, but it's kind of a pre-assessment for you to say, get the lay of the land of what your kids are coming into this lesson with, right? What family and community knowledges are they coming into a lesson with? We have during and in lesson tools that incorporate family and community knowledges into ongoing lessons. So the lessons are all multi-day, or most of them are multi-day. And so what you'll have is like, after maybe day 1 of a lesson, you'll send home a family tool that will help inform a discussion that happens 2 or 3 days later. So for example, we have a lesson on media literacy, and a family tool that goes home during that is, how do we know if we can trust what we see and hear? So you get families' ideas about information sources of where they get their information sources and how they know how to trust those sources, right? And you get information like, well, our most trusted people, our most trusted sources of information are maybe elders in our community, right? That's really informative as a teacher for you to be able to inform your discussions in classrooms. And finally, we have post-lesson tools that are sort of like reflection moments and they enable students to go home and discuss with their families, what did I learn in this lesson and how as a family do we think about that? And so it kind of is an opportunity for students to bring classroom knowledge into families and for families to discuss that knowledge together. And so when you look at the storyline, so on OpenSciEd, if you're familiar with the OpenSciEd format, they always have these storyline graphics where you can sort of map out the entire storyline. And what you'll see is that we have this what we explore with our families and what we explore with our class, always incorporated throughout each of the lessons. So you can sort of see that interplay between classroom and family knowledge. Okay.